1999 The Podcast is a production of the Cage Club Podcast Network. For more podcasts on movies, comics, and all things pop culture, head to cageclub.me. To contact us with questions, comments, or just to say hi, send us an email at 1999@cageclub.me. You can find me on Twitter at probablyrealjb and Joey at Soulpot. And you can follow the show on Twitter at 1999 The Podcast. To support the show, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. The show is written, produced, and edited by us. Welcome to 1999 The Podcast. I'm John Brooks.
And I am Joey Lewandowski.
Joey, it has, as the millennials say, been a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, listeners wouldn't know that because of the magic of recording things in advance and then putting them at a later date. But we haven't talked in like a month. So how's it been? How's your Twin Peaks?
I made my pilgrimage to your summer 1999 hangouts. I went to all your movie theaters. I saw one 1999 movie in each of your movie theaters.
Wow.
I spent the last month in Seattle watching movies.
That sounds like a lot of information I didn't give you.
No, but I have technology that you're not aware of.
Yeah.
No, it was great. Seattle was great. Denver was great. I had a great time. How was England?
England was great. You can hear more about it in my other show from this week. So if you listen to Pod Only Knows, I talked a lot about it there. I'm not going to get into too much detail, but it was really good. And it was. The girls had a good time, and they mostly didn't complain, and they seemed to enjoy things and absorb them and all that sort of thing. And
this is their first time that they were over there, right? Or no?
Yeah. We haven't been in a long time, and we waited until they were old enough where the investment of like $10,000 in a 2-week trip would be worth it for them to remember it. So now that they are almost 10 and 7 and 7, it seemed like the right time. And they started school today, and I'm back to work, and it's all changing.
It's all downhill from here.
Fall's coming. Did you have a pie?
I did. It was fine. It was not damn fine. It was just fine. The double. Have you been to the Double R? Have you been there?
Yeah.
Recently?
Oh, not for like.
So they are really coasting on. People will be here just for the movie or for the TV show.
Oh, they were always doing that. Yep.
Service is awful. The food is just fine. But it's cool to be in the room, right? And there's like art on the walls, and there's pictures in the back end. There's merchandise and memorabilia and stuff you can buy or whatever, like little stickers and stuff. So it's cool to be there. But man, oh man, like the kid working the register was the worst employee of any business I've ever seen, where he was just like, he talked more about how he made his necklace to the guy who's like, hey, I like that, than he did. Like, he spent a longer time doing that than anything else. He was taking a long time to do it. It was wild. I'm just like, I got nowhere to be.
That's the most Washington State thing I've ever heard in my life.
It was like a crystal. It was a whole thing. I'm sure you can imagine exactly what kind of necklace it is.
Yeah. This all sounds incredibly authentic as a story, but so you saw the Twin Peaks. I used to hike up Mount Si, which is the sort of like more prominent one. The steeper one I think is Tiger Mountain, and I've never hiked up that because
I don't think I actually saw. I mean, I didn't make note of the mountains themselves. I went to Snoqualmie Falls, which is the opening title falls, which is very beautiful.
It is beautiful.
And I did the diner, and otherwise just in the area. But I didn't go to. I'm sure I saw both mountains. I'm assuming both peaks are visible. I would assume
they are. They are pretty much towering over that diner. So
I definitely saw them in the background.
Yeah. So those are the Twin Peaks.
Very exciting.
Anyway, so we're back, and we had a little change of plans. So astute listeners might know that at the end of each episode, we do a bit of a preview stinger, and that last episode, our Straight Story episode, did not include one because I edited that out because we changed our minds last minute.
Listen to the episode. I'm just like, did we not do one? I don't remember.
We did do one, but I was like, that's not the movie anymore. We decided that due to the sad passing of the legendary comic actor Paul Reubens last month, that we would honor Paul Reubens by discussing the one movie that Paul Reubens made in 1999. One that I've been wanting to discuss for a long time. You have a history with this movie. I have a history with this movie. It's going to be an interesting talk about it anyway. So today, the movie that we are discussing comes in at 68th in the 1999 box office and stars Paul Reubens alongside an absolutely extraordinary cast, which is in no particular order. All right, buckle in.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Stiller, 1999 returning champion William H. Macy, Janine Garofalo, Hank Azaria, Greg Kinnear, Kel Mitchell, Jeffrey Rush, Wes Studi, Claire Forlani, Susie Eddie Izzard, Praz, Lena Olin, Tom Waits, Artie Lang, Ricky Jay, Jennifer Lewis, two-time returning champion Ned Bellamy of Being John Malkovich and Bats fame, with cameos from Ricky Rackman, Kinka Usher himself, Sung Justice for Han Kang.
I didn't see him. Who is he? Where is he?
Someone in one of the bad guy groups. CeeLo Green, Mark Mothersbaugh, Michael Bay, Doug Jones as Pencilhead, Dana Gould as Squeegee Man, and returning champion and show favorite and fan favorite Dane Cook as the Waffler. Directed by Kinka Usher and written by Neil Cuthbert, based on the comic book series by Bob Burden. Today, we are talking about Mystery Men. Joey, what is Mystery Men about?
Well, before I get there, I am looking at a picture of Sung Kang in Mystery Men. He is one of the Susies, and he's sitting down. I did not see him in this movie, but I also was not looking for him.
But you saw Michael Bay, right? You know the Michael Bay.
The
Brewskis line.
And then I went online to confirm that was him, and I was like, yes, that is.
Of the frat boys.
Michael Bay.
It's a great
So
guy.
Mystery Men. You asked what it's about.
Yes,
is that correct?
What's it about? Yep.
It's a superhero comedy film with a unique take on the conventional superhero narrative. Set in Champion City, a metropolis plagued by crime, the story centers around a group of unconventional and inept aspiring superheroes known as, sort of maybe, the Mystery Men. They possess idiosyncratic abilities, setting them apart from the traditional superhero type. The plot unfolds as Champion City's established superhero, Captain Amazing, Greg Kinnear, falls victim to the machinations of the villainous Casanova Frankenstein, played by Jeffrey Rush. Captain Amazing is captured by Casanova, which prompts the Mystery Men to take on the challenge of thwarting his plans. This crew includes characters like Mr. Furious, played by Ben Stiller, who gets strength from his anger, the Shoveler, William H. Macy, who wields a shovel as a weapon, and the Blue Raja, by Hank Azaria, who hurls forks and spoons with impressive accuracy while speaking like a British aristocrat. The team also recruits Janine Garofalo as the bowler, whose crystal bowling ball contains the skull of her dead father, Kel Mitchell as Invisible Boy, an amateur superhero who can only become invisible if no one is looking, and the aforementioned, everybody's aforementioned, but Paul Reubens as Spleen, whose flatulence makes others faint. In their pursuit to save Champion City, the Mystery Men face an uphill battle due to their lack of traditional superhero abilities. The team faces challenges that test their unity and their ability to embrace their strengths. The Sphinx, played by Wes Studi, serves as their mentor, helping the heroes recognize their potential, empowering them to harness their abilities. The team breaks into Casanova's mansion during a summit of several of the city's gangs. While attempting to free Captain Amazing, they accidentally set off the, psychofraculator? Is that right?
Sounds right. Yep.
And kill him. On their second try at saving the day, they use their powers to team up and perform better as a team than they ever have before. Casanova Frankenstein once again activates the, psychofraculator, which begins to wreak havoc upon the city. Eventually, Mr. Furious throws Casanova Frankenstein into the machine's core, killing him and allowing the team to destroy the device and save the day. Cue All-Star.
Mystery Men arrived at a very strange but opportune time, as it both lampooned and heralded the rebirth of the superhero genre. The earliest stages of its production date to the mid-1990s, when movies like 1998's Blade, often seen as the birthplace of the modern superhero film, began pre-production. It was offered first to Danny DeVito to direct, and then to Stiller, who both turned it down for personal reasons, though of course Stiller would return to the film as its star, before landing in the lap of French commercial director Kinka Usher, who is behind two of the most iconic ad campaigns of the 1990s. Got Milk and the Taco Bell Chihuahua.
Sorry to interrupt. I saw on Letterboxd, I clicked on his name, and he had directed one thing that was on Letterboxd, and it was this, and I'm just but his bio was he's also an acclaimed commercial director. I'm just I'm not going to look this up. I'm going to wait to find out what it is, but if you ask me like the level to which, if that's the right thing, like what success he had achieved, I don't think I ever would have
Yeah.
guessed one of those campaigns, let alone two. That's
Yeah.
crazy. That's impressive.
It is pretty impressive, and so impressive that he was awarded Best Commercial Director by the Directors
Ooh.
Guild of America in 1997. Usher was no stranger to the sort of thing that Mystery Men so lovingly sent up, having cut his teeth in the industry as a camera operator for Roger Corman. Garofalo, in the midst of her star's high point following the successes of The Truth About Cats and Dogs in 1996 and Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion in 1998, initially turned the movie down but changed her mind when she heard that Macy and Rush were on board. She then convinced Stiller, her old friend and co-star of The Ben Stiller Show, to join the cast. Subsequently, the rest of the absurd cast began to come into place as the production took a very free-spirited, collaborative approach, with actors reworking their characters and improvising lines on the fly. So much so that one would be forgiven for thinking Mystery Men was an extended feature-length Ben Stiller Show sketch. And of course, Mystery Men was given a bit of a boost in visibility when it decided to heavily feature a song that would go on to be one of the definitive songs, for better or worse, of 1999, Smash Mouth's All-Star. This is the first time All-Star is used in a movie. It is not the last time. It is also used in Shrek, but Shrek was quite a bit later. The song came out right around the same time as the movie. They were tied together. The music video for the song included scenes from Mystery Men. It was one of those kind of dealies. How do you feel about Smash Mouth?
I know this song. I know Walking on the Sun. I think that's the extent of my knowledge with them. I think, is this the Mark McGrath band? Is that this band?
No, that's Sugar Ray.
Oh boy.
Sugar Ray is the I was going to make a metaphor to
that was the metaphor that was before we started recording, right? John described these in a way that, like, my head is still, like, I feel like I have a headache because of this one sentence. Like, it's not. Oh boy, I don't know any. Wait, so Smash Mouth is, what's the lead singer in Smash Mouth?
That guy. He looks like Guy Fieri,
right? But what's his name? Well, Mark McGrath also has the frosted tips. His name. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yes. Yeah.
I don't have an opinion on them. Do you have an opinion on them?
I mean, so like they had Walking on the Sun, and they had the from Shrek, the cover of I'm a Believer.
Oh yeah. Oh, I guess Shrek is big in your house, probably, isn't it?
And then they did the cover of Why Can't We Be Friends as well, I think, for another movie. Yeah, I mean, they're like, I think people like shit on Smash Mouth, but like, honestly, Walking on the Sun when it came out was like, didn't sound like anything else on the radio at the time. And like, it's kind of a cool song. And you know, this is a fun song.
I love this song when it came out. I don't really have as much of an attachment to Walking in the Sun as I do to this song, but like, this song was huge, and it was I was the right age, and
yeah, Smash Mouth doesn't really hold up, but like, it seems the way that people kind of shit on Smash Mouth, I'm like, this is sort of like, they're just fun. They were a fun band. Like, there's nothing offensive about their music, and like, they had a shtick and whatever. I guess I'm a defender of Smash Mouth, I think. Yeah. I mean, Sugar Ray sucked. Like, I hated Sugar Ray. And I hate Nickelback. And
wait, what's Sugar Ray's big song?
Sugar Ray's big song was Fly.
Oh.
And that song was annoying as fuck. So
there's also the Bare Naked Ladies.
Right.
Wait, that's 1 week.
That's 1 week. You got it.
Right. Okay. See, I'm getting there.
All coming together now.
No, it's not coming together. It's actually getting further apart.
All right, we'll move on. Even so, the film cost a lot of money and did not earn it back. It earned just shy of $34 million on a $68 million budget, much of which was probably due to timing, opening in 6th place against what would prove to be a 1999 juggernaut, The Sixth Sense. They both opened the same week, while Blair Witch and Runaway Bride still dominated the box office, and the newly released Thomas Crown Affair opened in 4th place. The audience for Mystery Men just was not there. For his part, Usher, who at the time was being buzzed about quite a bit as a promising new feature director, never made a movie again, finding the whole process miserable and overwhelming, and according to Hank Azaria, said, quote, "I'm going back to commercials. When this is done, I've had enough. I'd much rather do my cool little 1-minute shorts than deal with all of this nonsense."
Miserable to men.
There you go. That's the oral history of King Usher title. Misery Men makes more sense than miserable tea men. Joey, Misery Men.
Yeah, but
Misery Man.
I was trying to use the
Kinka
exact quote they
Usher
used, but yes, that's a better one.
story.
That's a better one.
I gotcha. Some of the nonsense was likely friction between the cast, whose relentless improvising seems to have led to some disagreements of the direction of the comedy, especially between Stiller and Kinnear, who apparently did not get along at all. But that's about all I know about that. Anyway, it was actually a reasonable success with critics. It holds the bare minimum score of 60 to earn a fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes with 105 reviews and a 57 audience score with more than 100,000 ratings. Similarly, on Metacritic, it holds a rating of 65 with an identical audience score of 5.7. The most enthusiastic critic was the San Francisco Chronicle's Bob Graham, whose Metacritic score is 100 and who wrote, quote, "Someone ought to give the casting director of Mystery Men a prize. Maybe it's no mystery how they did it, considering the aggregate comic talent, but this bunch achieves peaks of sublime nuttiness." Positive reviews also came from the LA Times' Kenneth Turan, the Austin Chronicle's Mark Savlov, Newsweek's Lauren Shin, Reader's Lisa Allspector, the New York Times' Elvis Mitchell, and Janet Maslin, Entertainment Weekly's Lisa Schwartzbaum, and our old friend, the always interesting David Edelstein of Slate, whose review is scored an 80 on Metacritic and who wrote, quote, "One of those half-straight, half-spoof comic book extravaganzas that don't ever work, and what's neat is that this one does beautifully." And while this is pretty much the definition of a divisive movie, it was never really panned. Its lowest Metacritic score is 50, which it receives 5 times, including from Roger Ebert, who called it, quote, "a long, shapeless, undisciplined mess, and every once in a while it generates a big laugh." And Salon's Stephanie Zacharek, who wrote, quote, "There's something especially maddening about a failed opportunity like Mystery Men, a movie about a group of misfit superheroes that has so much going for it in the cast alone. It makes you wish that actors themselves could be superheroes, able to save the day by electrifying pokey scripts and leapfrogging over bad direction, all in a single bound. But there's only so much that the likes of William H. Macy, Hank Azaria, and Ben Stiller can do when faced with director Kinka Usher's deadly arsenal of fish-eyed lenses and low-angle shots, used for no reason other than novelty value. Laser guns that can slice a man in half are one thing, but novelty value is a far more insidious danger. Like carbon monoxide, it's a silent killer." Anyway, I get the impression that we have different opinions about this movie, but I actually think we're probably going to not be all that far apart.
I'm very. I will save it for after the break.
Okay, we will see. In the meantime, Joey, who is our guest for Mystery Men?
Our guest today is video editor, filmmaker, pop culture junkie, and a diehard Mystery Men defender, Becky Ellis.
All right, we'll be right back with Becky. Becky, welcome to 1999 The Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
We have invited you because, well, I said in the intro that we initially had planned a different movie for this week, but with the the passing of Paul Reubens, we decided it was a good time to discuss the one movie that Paul Reubens made in 1999, and that, of course, is Mystery Men, and it just so happens that that is a movie of which you are a fan, and as you say in your bio, diehard defender.
Yes.
Of the Mystery Men, a Mystery Men for the Mystery Men. We will talk about how we feel about this movie. Before we do, would you like to talk a little bit about yourself and like what you we mentioned that you are a filmmaker and editor, and pop culture crazed person, but what else should people know about you?
Sure. So I live in Boston. I'm originally from the Midwest. I moved here to go to grad school and get my MFA in film production. And I graduated about 10 years ago, and I've been doing different kinds of production work and freelance editing ever since.
And I would guess, so I'm going to take a stab here and say you got your MFA in film production and you moved from the Midwest. and you're in Boston, and your MFA in film production is from Emerson College.
No,
Damn it!
I wish it were.
Wow, John, you got out Boston.
Boo!
It's BU, and all of my former classmates, when they let David Zaslav speak at commencement.
Oh yeah,
all of us were posting like, "Kids, go to Emerson instead."
Yeah, I almost went to Emerson. It was that was the last school between which I was deciding when I decided not to go to Emerson. But Emerson is a special place in my heart. But yeah, BU is good too. I mean, sure.
I mean, I'm glad I went there because of the people I met, and I did learn some good things, but I would recommend not going there.
Okay.
For film.
Not going there, period, or not going there for film study?
Not going. I can't speak about any of the other programs. Well, first of all, I know that the program I was in actually doesn't exist anymore. So
that's a really good reason not to go there.
Yeah. So you can, I believe, still study film as an undergrad, but they got rid of the graduate program. So I don't know. I will say it seems like a lot of the undergrad film students had a great experience, but the grad students, we did not. But it's a moot point because it's gone now.
Yeah, and grad students never have a good experience. So, you know. It's also a moot point. What is your, like, when did you start becoming interested in film? What is, like, your favorite kind of film? Like, what do you hope?
But don't tell us your favorite film yet.
No, not yet. Hold that to the end.
Okay. Well, I am going to have to mention something that we will talk about later, but it's like integral to my story.
Okay.
And it has to do with the 1999 film.
Perfect.
So I grew up a super religious evangelical household.
This is like another one of the themes of our show, Joey. We have so many evangelicals.
Three themes.
We out here.
We've moved past the one where John infected every female guest with COVID.
Yes. Congratulations,
that was
Becky,
our first era.
Me not giving you COVID.
We're gone with that. But we have two.
I want to be clear before we say anything else. I didn't actually infect anybody with COVID. It just sort of people got COVID after I invited them to be a guest on the show. But you can't catch COVID through Zencastr. So
well, it could be like, have you seen that movie Pontypool, where it's like it spreads through sound?
Yeah, I hope it. If it spreads through sound, then maybe I'm at fault. I don't know. Or if it spreads through emails, I don't know. But that's So Joey, that's point one. I just want to clear that up.
Number two, though, is the evangelical, overly religious, or not overly religious, but like hyper religious growing up, which also seems to go hand in hand on the opposite hand of parents who are absolutely too lax in terms of letting their 11-year-olds watch Blair Witch.
Yeah.
I do think it seems like there are a lot of us who are cinemaphiles because we were so sheltered from the world that it was one thing that gave us a window into things we wouldn't normally see or experience.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense.
In my background, luckily, thank God my parents let me go to public school and I wasn't homeschooled, so I'm not as sheltered as some of the evangelicals I know.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents were into like sci-fi and stuff, so I got to watch Star Wars. It's so weird. It's like anything with like witchcraft was bad, but like space is fine.
Yeah. No, there's a whole like religious fundamentalism and science fiction that like I there's got to be books about that, but that's always fascinated me. But yeah, you're right.
So my first really love was like Star Wars. That was one of my earliest memories is watching Star Wars when my parents were recording it off TV when I was like 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that really flipped a switch in my brain was in the year 1999. I was 15 years old, and my friend in drama club had her older friend get us tickets to Fight Club. And it blew my mind. And I've been like a hardcore David Fincher fan ever since.
Interesting. So what did you think of the trailer for the
Oh my God.
A knocked over eye Liller? I don't know what it's about.
So it's based on a French series of comic books, which I've never read, but I guess they're very very French, like very existentialist and nihilistic, and it's about this hitman. But I am
yeah, that's pretty much what I got from the trailer.
I'm so pumped about
this hitman
because it actually it's a lot of the shots are actually harkening back to Fight Club for me. Like, it
yeah.
sort of actually seems
I got
like
that vibe.
stuff from an earlier point in his career, but I think he's more skilled, like even more skilled now. So I'm extremely excited about it.
It did evoke memories just watching the trailer of like, look, the reason I was like, I will watch this even though I have no idea what it's about, was the Fight Club and Seven David Fincher style that seems to sort of
90s Fincher.
In Alien 3, kind of coming back. So Fight Club kind of changed your trajectory in life. That's interesting.
Yes, yeah, I had noticed. I kind of, when I would read books, I would sort of envision like, how could I make this a movie? And then when I saw that movie, I was like, all right, I gotta try to make this happen somehow at some point in my life. So it was kind of a slow trajectory. Like, I didn't go to film school until my late 20s, and I've just been mainly working as an editor and not doing much of my own films, but I'm planning on ramping that up right now. But it still was something that I knew, like, even if it takes a long time, like, I'm gonna make movies.
Yeah.
After
awesome.
I saw that.
That's awesome. I think you're the first guest we've had for whom like 1999 was an actual landmark year.
Awesome.
Let's talk about Mystery Men a little bit. So, like, did you see this movie? Like, when you saw Fight Club, was there this sort of like cascade of movies that started opening up for you after that? And did you start sort of ingesting movies more frequently? Did you see Mystery Men when it came out, or like
Yes,
when
I did.
You did,
and that's also weirdly related to Fight Club.
Awesome, keep going.
So I mean, as I've sort of hinted at, my family is very weird.
Yeah.
We were on vacation in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and it's a vacation, right? You're supposed to be on the beach or whatever. We went and saw a movie on, like, when we were on vacation. We saw Mystery Men. And I very vividly remember the trailer for Fight Club coming on before the movie, and I was like, what the fuck is this? And then, luckily I got to experience it later, because my one friend had already seen it, and she was like, just wouldn't shut up about it, and made all of us go see it, which I'm internally grateful for.
So you became like aware of Fight Club for the first time when you saw Mystery Man, and that's like part of why you remember seeing Mystery Man?
So technically, I am in the field I am in because of Mystery Men.
That is deeply profound.
Also a little crazy.
Okay, so when you saw it the first time, did you love it then? Did you like fall in love with it later? Has it just been a movie that you've always...
I loved it immediately, and it's one of those movies that like my family loved, and like we loved it when we saw it in the theater, and then we got it on VHS and we watched it over and over and over.
Yeah. It is it's a good communal movie if you can find the right people to watch it with who can appreciate the very sort of specific humor of the movie.
Yeah.
Which is something I learned very quickly after I fell in love with Mystery Men, but I'll talk more about that momentarily. So Joey, it's also interesting that Becky is like the first person who is like right between us in 1999. Joey was 11, I was 19, you were 15. So you have like the deciding vote.
Yeah, so we got like a
tiebreaker,
millennial, and I'm a zennial.
Yeah. I'm kind of a zennial too, but like, yes, let's say that I'm an Xer, you're a zennial, and Joey's a elder millennial, I think, technically.
No, I'm not an elder millennial. I think I'm still
one?
Part of.
You're the heart of the millennial generation.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Joey, you told me that this was a favorite movie of yours when you were like 12.
I love this movie. Not when it came out. I don't think I saw it in theaters, but I remember like this is the kind of movie that my dad really likes, and I felt okay like watching with us. Mm-hmm. And I remember watching it like I feel like other than I'm trying to think of movies that like I watched a lot shortly after 99. I feel like it might be like this, like basically high school age for me, like 02 to 06, and like I think it would have been like this and maybe Office Space, and maybe that's it. Like there weren't like a ton that like really made an imprint, but this was one I was just like, this is so good. And then as time went, like I had the DVD and like it's on Peacock now, but it won't be by the time it comes out. It expires, I think, August 31st.
Yeah.
So just missed
tomorrow.
It. Yep. But I was sort of dreading this. I'm like, I don't think it's going to hold up because like we had just done for Too Fast, my other podcast, Airplane from 1980, and we were talking about like, not that these are like the same kind of movies, but you know, that's another movie that I sort of discovered when I was 12, 13 ish, and like I thought was the funniest thing in the world. And we were comparing it to like other movies of that ilk, and I'm like, that's trying to make a movie. And I feel like my issue with this now is not that the humor didn't really hold up, because like it's partly true, but I feel like watching it this time, I'm so sorry if any or all of this offends you, Becky, but I just feel like it's a movie sort of stuck between a couple things. Like I think to me this time around, the funniest joke in the movie is talking about how Captain Amazing can't possibly be whatever his character is because he wears glasses. They're like, he couldn't see without the glasses.
Yeah.
And
Roy,
like,
that's ridiculous.
Me, like,
you wouldn't be able to see.
I think the movie that I wanted this to be is a series of those kind of things. And maybe there are more that I missed, but that like reference the Superman, Batman cliches and tropes and everything that like pokes fun at that. Not that I want like a parody of those, but I feel like that's such a funny on the nose, like a thing that people have, but like the way that they delivered in here, I just thought was perfect. And then I never really got that again. And then I spent the rest of the movie trying to figure out like what movie it was trying to be and whether like people have powers in this world, if there's actual supernatural stuff. And I feel like the movie never really makes a decision about that, because like mostly no, but also a little bit yes. And I'm just like, I kind of don't want it both ways. And I just felt like it wasn't exactly sure. And like, I didn't hate it. I just didn't like it. And it's not a movie that I wanted. Like, I almost kind of wanted to not watch it just to like remain in my memory that like, as a movie I loved when I was, middle school, high school, whatever, and just kind of keep it there for me.
Yeah.
Well, does that make sense? Like, it's
I
do. Because I do think, as much as I love this movie, it's like not everything works.
No,
I love this sort of just stupid energy about it. And I don't know, honestly, some of the stupidest jokes are the ones that I find funny. Like, I still say, fuck yourself, like, all the time.
I'm not Stab Man or Knife Boy.
I'm not Knifey Boy.
I'm the Blue Raja. It's funny, Joey, because one of my like after I got the DVD in like 2000, with all the extras, it has a bunch of deleted scenes, and some of the funniest scenes in this movie were deleted.
Really?
One of the best is this conversation between the Shoveler, Mr. Furious, and the Blue Raja, where they're discussing whether or not To the Rescue is a superhero classic or a cliche, and like the difference between cliches and classics.
Now let me see. What's the one and only thing I've ever asked of you in all the years we've known each other? Oh yes, I recall. It's never to bother me here, and yet you persist. Why is that?
You know what? Just once, I would like to yell "To the rescue," and everybody goes running out the door. Just once.
Really? To the rescue?
Yeah. Why?
Bit hackneyed, isn't it?
Guys, it's not hackneyed. It's a classic.
I think it's more of a cliche than a classic. Captain Amazing has been...
A cliche? No. Up and Away, that's a cliche, all right? Shazam, that's way cliche.
My dear boy, how could you possibly call one a cliche and the other a classic?
We be saving Captain Amazing? No, the situations that they're used in are often cliche, and also it has to do with the superhero who's actually saying it.
Half a ticket, old boy. What did you just say?
Captain Amazing is in danger.
What sort of danger?
He went into Casanova's, he didn't come out.
To the rescue!
Doesn't work.
No, it does.
It's frightfully
It was working
tired.
until he said it didn't work.
And like it's a great scene. It's exactly that sort of thing where it's sort of like that meta commentary on superhero stuff, as though they live in a world where there's comic books, right? But like, and that's where they're sort of getting their idea.
Like,
for
I would
being
like
superheroes.
that. I think that would be very like that's the kind of thing that I wanted. I will also give this movie. So this is one of either two things. Either like I either watch this movie enough to like burn it into my memory, or it was just when I wasn't watching, like a movie a day and I remembered the things that I watched actually.
Yeah.
But like so much of this movie stuck with me. Like I almost guarantee you I haven't seen this in like probably close to 20 years. But I still remember like like I remember dreading when we talked about Simon Says. I'm like, Dane Cook's going to be back. Like, but I remembered his 10 seconds on screen like very vividly. I remember that whole like the Gene Garofalo, introduction. I remember a lot of the Hank Azaria stuff. Like, there are big chunks of this movie, not just like lines or jokes or whatever, but like entire scenes that like stuck with me. So I think that's, maybe a testament to like the world building. It might just be like the fact that I had only seen maybe 100 movies about it. Who knows? But like, I think that's also a testament to the movie creating a thing that like is memorable, even if it's not like a memory that I, enjoy revisiting now. I think a lot of this is very colorful in a way that like stuck with me and I still, appreciate. And I remember like loving back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, my brother and I used to always sing the Dane Cook waffle song. Waffle man, going to crispy. That guy's a history.
It's easily my favorite Dane Cook performance, without any close second. Joey, I also think that the bits with Doug Jones and Dane Cook were both in the trailer, and I think that's why it sort of seems like it was a bigger deal.
Maybe
because
it was featured. That scene was featured in the trailer. So heavily.
I literally just learned that was Doug Jones.
Yeah.
I was rewatching it, and I am also watching What We Do in the Shadows, and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. There's an enormous number of people who are just in this movie. Including, as we talked about in the opening, Michael Bay.
That's my favorite cameo in the movie.
It's such a good gag too, because so Michael Bay and Kinka Usher are really good friends, but it's Michael Bay for once, like the only time in his career where he's acknowledged who he is, right? Where it's like he's a frat boy and he,
Did you guys see that picture of him that went viral the other day? Because it was very frat boy coded. And that's all. It's like him with his shirt off.
For fuck's sake.
Taking like an awkwardly angled selfie. Looking like
a new picture or like when he was actually
like a
in
photograph. Like a recent.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Michael Bay.
He's just an old dude, bro.
Yeah. So here's what I'll say, Joey, about the comedy, and then Becky, I'm going to ask you about like how you think it sort of holds up comedically. So I was thinking about this a lot, right? And I've shown this movie to a bunch of people over the years who are like, I don't get it. Right? And I'm like, how do you not get this? This is genius. And like what you said about Airplane, I think that's really interesting. So here's the thing, right? I have this sort of philosophy that there's basically two kinds of comedy, right? There's the timeless comedy, which is like very rare and a very specific kind of thing. And I think like we just talked about Bowfinger, and I think Bowfinger is one of those like timeless comedies, right? Like it works sort of whenever, mostly because we don't tend to change very much, and like Steve Martin's a genius. But then there's like the zeitgeist comedies that are sort of, they are tapping into like the way that comedy, and especially like stand-up comedy, is kind of done, and sketch comedy, like of an era. And I think Airplane is one of those movies that's like definitely funnier then than it is now. I'm thinking about like Ghostbusters for me just like does not hold up the way I want it to. I still love it, but like it's not a movie that I think you can really show people now and expect them to really like love it. Right, because it is so much of an era, and like the comedies of an era. And I really feel like Mystery Men, like this movie, this is like when I'm watching Mr. Show at the same time. And like Mr. Show is funny because I've memorized every sketch, and it's funnier every time I watch it when I know what's going to happen next. And this is one of those movies where like when I know every line that's coming up, I laugh in advance. Like I'm just like, I don't know. And that's something that's very like 90s comedy. And I just like, I do still love this movie, and I still find it funny, and I still think it's really, really clever. And like, I know it's a mess, but like, it's such a delightful, everybody's having a good time kind of a mess. But I definitely would not be like, hey, have you never seen Mystery Men? You should watch this for the first time in 2023. Like it just, that's sort of where I fall ultimately.
But I do think it's not super zeitgeisty. Like, I don't think it's as bad. Like, it's not the most 1999 movie we've done. Like, it's definitely toward
peak,
that end
like,
of the
Greg
spectrum.
Kinnear's style of comedy, right? Like the deadpan Greg Kinnear style, like the Ben Stiller, Janine Garofalo, like improv style, like, you know, the Hank Azaria doing all of his different like Simpsons voices. Like, that is the comedy of the 90s, and it all sort of gets put into a blender here. And it's not the same as the sort of comedy that we see now, right? Like, when you see a modern feature comedy, like, it's not this. And that's fine, because comedy like that tends to change. So, like, I still love it, but I would be I would ask a series of questions of somebody who hadn't seen Mystery Men before I would recommend it to them, because I think it has to be a very sort of specific right sort of sense of humor and age demo that it really works for. Becky, what about you? Like, do you still like everything that Joey and I just said? Do you agree? How do you go about evangelizing this movie to others?
So I'll be honest, I'm not like, I don't go around like, this is Citizen Kane and you have to see this, you know.
Tape it to your head and be like,
but I think the way I explain to people is like, it's so stupid.
Yeah.
It's just so incredibly stupid in the best way possible. And I feel like it's self-aware with that.
Yeah.
I guess I hadn't really thought about how, I guess because I grew up during, you know, the 90s, it's like, it's so coded in my brain that I forget that, like, oh, that's actually a time period of comedy. That's not just, this is what comedy is. So I hadn't really thought of that, but I think you're right that it's very, if they were to make this movie now, the jokes would be very, very different.
Like, I think when I was watching this, I could tell, because I knew that you, John, that you love this movie. When you like, I don't know, the way that you like, so like, we're doing this now, whatever, like, just the way that you had talked about it, like in the days leading up to like me watching it, I was just like, oh, John's gonna love this movie. And like, I watched it, just like, oh, because it's filled with people he likes doing the thing that they're known for doing, right? And it's like, I don't think it's,
or
like,
in the case of like William H. Macy, what they're not known for doing. Which,
correct, right? Yes, exactly. But it's like, it's the same kind of thing where it feels to me like the same kind of conversation we've had in a handful of episodes this season, where it's just like, you say, can you believe they got all these actors in this movie? And I say, yes, because they're all nobodies. Like, not that they're nobodies, but it's just like, they mean so much to you because you're just enough older that like you have enough basis for like them coming together as like a thing.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I know Janine Garofalo as the bowler from Mystery Men. Like, I don't have a history with it. You know what I mean? Like, it's that kind of thing where it's like, this is what I knew her from. And like, only years later, it's like, oh, she's also a stand-up. Cool. All right. Interesting. Like, that kind of thing where it's, I feel like, not, these movies just mean different things to us because I don't have the like the historical context of like these confluence, and like, I don't know, it's interesting.
Becky, I mean, you were somewhat young and sheltered, but like, when you watched it the first time, did you have a relationship with, I mean, and there's a million people in this movie, but like, did you have a fan relationship with any of them?
I mean, I knew who Ben Stiller was, and I knew who Janine Garofalo was, just by like cultural osmosis. Because, like I said, even though my family's super religious, luckily I got to go to public school, so I tried to get
so
as much
all
information.
The kids were like, "Yo, Ben Stiller!" Yeah.
As I could, and I knew Hank Azaria from The Simpsons, but I don't think I really was like a huge fan of anybody in the movie. I think like my family had seen trailers and thought it looked like really silly, so we were like, let's go see it.
I'm trying to think who I would have known before I saw it, and I think my list might have been Kel Mitchell, because I was of the age for all that.
Oh yeah,
who's great in this movie, by the way. I
didn't know
Pee Wee
Pee-wee.
in this movie. You didn't know Pee Wee. We're going to talk about that in a second, but
no, I didn't know Pee Wee. I hadn't watched The Simpsons. Didn't really like, I guess William H. Macy, like, I hadn't seen Fargo. Like, I might have only known Kel and maybe Dean Cook, and Dean Cook is like right around that time where I probably did know him, but like
the two like objectively least famous people at the time who were.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think it's also like that's how you bring in 10 to 12-year-old kids. Like,
Sure.
other than making a silly trailer, it's like the people you know from these other things, right? So.
And Kel Mitchell is so funny in this movie, and the scenes with Invisible Boy are just always, I mean, they're so great. Especially the one where like he actually turns invisible, and Janeane Garofalo.
And then,
how about
like,
you put some pants on or something?
on.
Yeah. If you want to continue fighting evil today. Yeah. So that's I think you're right. That's kind of part of it. I was of an age where I had watched Talk Soup on E when Greg Kinnear was the host. I don't
even think I ever knew that. So that was clearly before Joel McHale.
Was before Joel McHale.
Were there people before?
It was before Brian Henson. Like it was, not Brian Henson. What's his name? Henson.
Oh God.
John Henson.
John Henson, and then who was the little dude?
Hal Sparks.
Yeah.
But yeah, originally it was Greg Kinnear. That's where he started his career, basically. And his show was just so fucking deadpan. Like, it was just the driest, and it was so goddamn funny. If you understood that humor. And so I was a big fan of him. Like, I watched the Ben Stiller show when it was on Fox for that 1 year. And like, obviously a lot of these people are sort of tangentially connected to Mr. Show and like, all that sort of thing. And like, William H. Macy, and then of course, Paul Rubens. So yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, I literally saw the trailer for this. I'm like, holy shit! Like, how are all these people in one movie? But yeah, that wasn't like even what necessarily did it for me. I think also if you grow up watching like the $6 Million Man or like the Lou Ferrigno Incredible Hulk show, like a lot of that stuff is being directly referenced here, including the like that scene in the end where they jump off the ledge and
they do the $6 Million Man.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that when I saw it like as a teenager because I didn't get that reference, but I caught it rewatching now.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's like for a very specific group of people, who was me, and obviously also David Edelstein, I guess, in 1999.
I will say that in that kind of thing where it's like knowing the reference, that I think there are certain things about this that work better now. Like, I think in retrospect, the oversaturation has soured me mentally on like even MCU movies that I enjoy.
Yeah.
But like how many superhero movies we've all seen over the last like 15 years that end with like, I mean, I'm not going to shit talk the first Iron Man because I think that's one of the best superhero movies ever made. But like, when it's essentially, I guess I am Iron, like ending with what you're called, and here like them taking the piss out of themselves by like the guy suggesting the name and they don't even hear it. Like, I think that works well because of like without them knowing how many movies do that exact same thing, but like without irony. Be like, I guess we are the Avengers. Or it's just like, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? Where it's like, they know, like, that's exactly the kind of premise, but like all these really quip heavy movies try to do that as like a send off the audience. Like, yeah, don't you love this group? And they're just like, look at these idiots. They can't even get that right.
Yes. And Janeane Garofalo taking her 5 minutes of fame to like plug the liberal arts.
Oh, yeah. I was like, it's so relevant.
It is so relevant. All right, so let me ask you. We're going to get to Paul Rubens in a second too. But so I'll start with Joey. Is there like, of the people in this, who like, and there's a lot of different performers doing a lot of different kinds of performances. Who do you like the most?
I remember when I was watching this when I was young, I really liked Janeane Garofalo, and I don't really know why, but I remember liking her the most then.
Yeah.
I think so, especially now that I am entirely too deep into The Simpsons to a point where like it's not a good show anymore. I'm just working through it. Everything I see Hank Azaria do, I'm just like, how much talent does this man have? Like, it's just amazing. And like, I'm not gonna say like Blue Raja is better than like Brockmire or Huff or like any other like TV show or like anything he does on The Simpsons, but like I just look at him and I'm just like, I cannot believe how good you are at like what you do. And I'm just in awe of him in whatever I see him in or hear him in or whatever. And I think this time I liked him the most because like I'm kind of tired of like comedic Ben Stiller and other whatever. Like I like other things about other people or whatever, but like Hank Azaria in this movie, just like I'm just in awe of his abilities.
That scene with his mom when his real accent comes out is like just goddamn hysterical. Every
yeah.
Also, when the mom like gives him her nice china, like it's actually like a sweet moment.
Really
like
sweet.
there's two good scenes between them.
There is. And we are going to there's another Hank Azaria movie from this year that is very, very different and will only further affirm exactly what you just said in terms of like the extent of that man's talent and his ability to do stuff. But more on that in the coming months. Becky, what about you? What's your performance in this movie that
absolutely William H. Macy.
Okay.
I mean, the fact
why
that he's in this movie is so random, but like
Yeah.
his character is just so earnest. I crack up every single time, and I love that Jennifer Lewis is.
Oh my god,
she's
it's
amazing,
fucking fantastic. Yes,
but
yes.
when he's like, Lucille, God gave me a gift.
God gave me a gift.
I shovel well. I shovel very well. And she's like, "You're the best damn shoveler I've ever known." That's probably my favorite scene.
It's a great scene, and also like it was 1999 having a interracial couple feature so prominently in a major sort of, mainstream Hollywood studio movie was not normal. Like not, you didn't see that a lot.
Yeah.
So and I also think like that was kind of interesting because it was also playing to the kind of fuck you energy this movie has, where like it really, like, it's not just sending things up and doing so kind of lovingly. It's also just sort of being like, we don't really care about rules. Like it's very sort of like anarchical in a weird way, right? And like having that relationship with the shoveler, right, and having him sort of live in like the inner city, right, as William H. Macy, who is this like, waspy white actor,
like the whitest man
alive. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I thought even that was like a very inspired and very sort of the time kind of joke. I mean, I love Ben Stiller. I love the way he delivers lines in this. I mean, I love the whole concept of Mr. Furious. I love his misnomers and his inability to get out the like crucial superhero line in like the exact moment, right? Like all of that stuff, like, because that to me that's the thing that like it's the most obvious kind of superhero trope. It's like the catchphrase, and it's like the hardest to like make really good fun of in a way that like works. But when he, early on when the cop calls him a wannabe and he's like, keep dreaming wannabe, he's like, I will keep dreaming. And when I wake up, and then they're like, come along, Roy. And it's like, you better hope you're asleep.
Lilac. My favorite, and I still quote this every now and again, is when he's like, you guys are like lazy boy recliner.
Oh man, and the whole thing with Claire Forlani where he's like, what does he call it, a Harley compatible his motorcycle. Man, I love Claire Forlani too.
I will say, on the topic of Claire Forlani, she is bringing, and I don't think it's like a knockoff because it's just parallel thinking and maybe just of the time. She's bringing very big Jennifer Aniston in Office Space energy to this, to the unattainably beautiful girl underemployed at a restaurant that people just fall in love with because of like the proximity crush, but also just like sort of, manic pixie dream girling him a little bit. But
yeah,
she's really good in this. For some, like, of the quote unquote normal people in this movie, I think she's probably my favorite, even though she's basically just doing the Jennifer Aniston thing, but she's good in it.
And like the way it makes use, I think, of all of the minor actors. There's a great scene that was left out with Louis Guzman as well. Speaking of like everybody being in this movie, that's a deleted scene.
From Boogie Nights are in this movie.
I know, exactly. So like Louis Guzman is the guy who works at the Mexican restaurant that they have to go to find the Sphinx. And there's a really hilarious scene with him. But like Ricky Jay, and like that one scene where he's like, I'm not a magician. like with which Ricky Jay definitely was.
Yeah.
And like Wes Studi is just so perfectly used in this movie too. And like the character of the Sphinx is like, you know exactly what that is, and the way he's like handing out all of these absurd like Zen, you know, pieces of advice that like Yoda.
Yeah.
And they're just like the inversion of something. Like I have a list actually of all the Sphinx quotes, but like it's one of the things I think like you have to give this movie credit for is that nobody's wasted, and that goes down to like people with one line, right? And like a movie like this does tend to waste its great cast. I don't think you can say that any of the talent of this movie is ever wasted.
It's not exactly that, but what I will offer some surprise about here, John, is that if there's one thing you have beat a drum about on this show, is not just about movies from this year, but about all movies, is that comedies should not be longer than 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And when I fired this up and I was like, why the F is this 2 hours and 1 minute long?
Yeah.
I want to hear your take on, because I appreciate what you're saying, that like everyone is given their time in court and everyone makes the use of the time they have on screen, but that collective amount of time on screen adds up to a much longer movie than I was expecting. And I do think now, especially if it were 85-ish minutes, I would like it more. But I'm wondering if this is something that you hold true about this movie, or if there's an exception for this for some reason.
No, it's too long. I completely agree. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Becca, do you think so?
Upon rewatch, I will say, like, it drags a bit in the middle.
Yeah.
I still enjoy all of it, but I think there could have been edits made.
Yeah.
I think that goes back to my original point that this movie doesn't really know what it wants to be, because I think if it really wanted to just be like a comedy, either like a send-up of superhero movies, which I know at this point like there weren't a ton, but there were enough to make fun of, or if it wanted to just be like a comedy about like goofy people, like a ragtag bunch of misfits, I think it would be closer to that 90-minute mark. But I think it also wants to be like kind of an actual adventure movie, and also wants to be like, you know, a suspenseful movie, and like it's trying to do too many things, and like I think if it just picked on any one of those things, I think it would be better. But the fact that it's trying to like be not all things to all people, but like a bunch of things to a bunch of different people, it kind of leaves it jumbled. And I think if you have the nostalgia for it, and if you like these kind of things, you're going to be able to overlook that. But I think for most other people, like John, you were saying, the whole like checklist of questions to ask, I think it's a tougher sell just based on like the length and sort of the mishmash, not necessarily bad, but just unfocused.
And again, part of that probably has to do with the fact that like you have this first-time director and last-time director of features in Kinka.
But this guy is good at making short things.
That actually, you're right. That is kind of ironic. But short things dragged out over the course of years, like the Got Milk ads and the Taco Bell Chihuahua. But I don't know.
I just found out the director did those Nissan commercials from the 90s that I loved, with like they had the Barbie and the G.I. Joe that get together.
Oh, I don't remember those, I don't think.
And they play Van Halen. It's really good.
I mean, he makes great commercials. Like that's why he won like awards for it.
And I'm assuming that's like how he knows. Like I'm assuming him and Michael Bay probably worked together.
Yes.
On commercials.
Well,
the 90s commercial boys.
Yeah. I think what's interesting might be a strong word here, but I think that there's a comparison to be made to the other director that Becky was mentioning before, and David Fincher, starting in music videos, which is similar but different enough that I don't know that people, like, everything has just changed so radically in the last 24 years that like people aren't cutting their teeth making commercials anymore. Like, who knows who directed any commercial the last 25 years, right? Like or not 25, but like 10 years, say, right? Like since YouTube, in the YouTube era, does anybody know who made any commercial? But like someone like Joseph Kahn can direct a dozen of Taylor Swift's biggest music videos, then go on and make 3 feature-length films that are all like pretty good to great, right? Like I think there's still like that trajectory still exists sometimes, but this one is a particular thing that like I don't think exists. I mean, maybe it does. Maybe somebody that we, love today came from commercials, but like I don't think they did.
I genuinely don't know. I mean, I think there were so many avenues now to become a filmmaker that now we have. I don't know if you guys are familiar with or saw the movie Talk to Me, but those are like 2 YouTuber guys that just made an excellent film. And I think any way that you can start sort of cutting your teeth in media, if you really want to tell a story, you can make it happen. So I mean, I don't know if it's people as high profile, because I do think that that was a particular 90s thing. There was a particular style of advertising in the 90s that I think was really kinetic and almost more like a music video that lent itself to directors coming from that, that maybe doesn't exist anymore. But
well, I think there's also the simple fact that like people don't really watch commercials anymore, right? Like if they watch like an AVOD service like a Tubi, they'll see ads, but like we have so severely yanked the steering wheel away from like commercials on TV and stuff like that people just don't see them anymore. And so why would anybody who like has actual, this sounds so condescending to commercial directors, but like has like artistic ambitions, like start there. Like they would do, like you're saying, Beck, like they would start on YouTube, they would start on TikTok, they would start anywhere where there's people, there's an audience already built in, and then, you know, hone their craft and build their following that way, and then transition that into something, as opposed to just like, it feels like it feels insane in like a cool kind of, you know, time capsule way that somebody could go from making commercials like only there to sell a product to like, hey, you want to like lead this, you know, multi-million-dollar feature-length film with all these actors that people know and love.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah. And the other thing, Joey, that I was just thinking of is like you kind of mentioned this, but you know, with music videos, it's all about editing, and with television commercials, like it's not. It's about like telling a story and building a narrative, right? And Fincher is obviously someone who like a lot of his style is editing, right? Like that's part of the sort of like the visual aesthetic. Becky is someone who's done a bunch of editing. Like, how could Mystery Men be better?
I mean, we could take some stuff out of it.
Yeah. But all the deleted scenes are awesome and should be back in the movie.
Yeah.
Like that's the problem, right? Like that's the sort of like double-edged sword.
Let me think. I mean, because I'm going to be honest, like nothing really stood out to me. Like I didn't see any cuts where I was like, oh, Jesus. But there also wasn't something that like, you know, say in a David Fincher movie or in like a Scorsese movie where the editing is so good that it like really stands out as being excellent. I thought it was just like a serviceable job.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some fun edits. Like I mean, this is a little more about how it was shot, but that scene with William H. Macy where they then cut to her perspective and back to him, and she puts like her rubber gloves on his face.
Yeah, and like the scene, the superhero interview scene is like well edited, right? Like there's just something about the way that this movie kind of moves that just feels like the pacing just keeps sort of, you know, it's like an accordion, like it just sort of keeps expanding and contracting, and like it's never quite has a consistent pace.
I wonder, you know, there's a lot of podcasts that have like been built around the specific idea, and we do it, you know, on Too Fast as part of the bigger shows. But like, I wonder if you broke this movie down by minute chunks, if it would be like really good. If you're like, hey, each of these like little bite-sized things, like there's like a little bit and just like doesn't connect. Like, I wonder just in terms of like what Becky's saying in terms of like the specific types of editing, what we're talking about, the commercial directing, like if on a smaller scale, things like that interview scene, things like the diner scene, things like the whatever scene work well, and they just kind of feel disjointed. I don't, you know, I didn't watch it that way. I wonder if that would be.
I think you have a point there. Now that I think about it, like there's a bunch of little mini films within this movie.
Yes.
Like I think like the superhero audition scene is its own little thing, and that opening where they're at the old folks home, that's its own little thing. And I think maybe that's why some of it feels like it drags, because it's like, especially as a commercial director, it's like he took and made a whole bunch of little mini movies and strung them together.
Or it's like a sketch show, like John was. I don't remember if that was an intro or thing, but like the Ben Stiller show, where it's just like this is just kind of a collection of ideas that kind of go together. Like if there's like Mystery Men the miniseries or something, or like if Mystery Men was like an ongoing thing within a broader sketch show, maybe like this is the funniest thing in the world, but like on its own, maybe it's not strong enough to sustain whatever. I don't know. I'm just trying to like rationalize or come to terms or kind of understand like what about this, because it's not like it's not one of the movies that we've covered here that I've hated. It's just that like something about it doesn't work, and I can't really articulate the specific, and I'm just trying to like.
I also like what you are saying. I felt about it the first time I saw it. Like I love it in spite of that, right? Like I knew that part of it dragged. I knew that it was like all over the place, but that like it would always win me over by that 1 minute of just like inspired genius that just keeps happening over and over and over and over again in this movie, and like unlike so many other movies. So yeah, like I don't know how you could improve it, but like yeah, I think we're all on the same page that there's something that just is clunky. I mean, I think that's
yeah, from my perspective, when I really think about it, I think, and I don't know if this was like production interference or how they marketed it or anything, but it's like they couldn't decide, like, is this just a comedy, or
right.
do we want to do a little bit of superhero world building? And I don't think they completely failed, but I think it would be more successful if they picked a lane.
I think if you read a little bit about the development of this movie and also the production of it, you will come to the exact conclusion that you just came to, right? Mm-hmm. Like that like people disagreed about what it should be in pre-production when like Danny DeVito was going to direct it and he had ideas and they were like, no, don't do that. And then Stiller was going to direct it and then he was like, I'm busy, I can't do it, I can't take it on. And so like, yeah, there was a bunch of different thoughts. I mean, it's kind of like what happened to Wild Wild West, except that's much more dire in terms of like how it ended, right? But also, I think like what makes this movie magical is probably also what sort of gives it exactly what you're saying, which is that there was a lot of the actors were given so much free rein to kind of just improvise whatever and like develop their own characters how they saw fit and do their own comedy, that there was like a lot of by the end of it like internal conflict between some of the stars over like what kind of comedy it was. And you know, when you have someone like Hank Usher who's just stepping in for the first and last time as director, he's like, he doesn't know how to corral that, he doesn't know how to like, you know, keep egos in check. And so I think that's kind of what's bleeding through a little bit, right? Which again is part of what gives it its sort of mad, sort of, you know, anarchist charm, but also probably keeps it from being a, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of what I like about it. It's just has this bonkers energy.
Yeah. Bonkers energy is a good way to say it.
So unabashedly silly.
Yes. Yeah. Speaking of silly, one of the superheroes has an origin story about the first time that he had a magical fart, and that's his superpower. Paul Rubens in this movie is so, like, if anybody is fully coming in being like, this is the movie that it is, and I am entirely committed to this character and this performance, right? Paul Rubens in this movie is one of the most like all in comic performances I've ever seen in a movie, and I think it's absolutely amazing, and one of the things that sort of glues the movie together in a weird way, because he's the one who, like, you know, we use the term like understands the assignment. Like, yeah. I think he got to the heart of what this movie is more concisely and like more like incisively than anybody else in the cast.
Yeah, and I think he really was not afraid to just go there and just really lean into like, I'm the fart guy, I'm disgusting.
And it's a hard thing to lean into because, like, you know, it takes a sort of a selfless kind of comic actor to really lean into that. Now, Joey, so this is interesting. So yeah. you grew up in like so I will tell you this, and I again, Becky being sort of in the middle here, be interested to find out. So when I was, you know, in elementary school, I was of the perfect age where everybody knew exactly one kid in class who did the Pee Wee Herman impression.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, we watched Pee Wee's Playhouse every Saturday. Pee Wee was a huge icon for my like specific sub demographic. And yeah, like, you know, I loved Paul Rubens in the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie, which is a terrible movie, but he's awesome in it. And, you know, in Batman Returns as the Penguin's father, which is like a non-talking scene, but it's so creepy and funny and weird. And like, he's the best. So Joey, when did you... And I'll ask you this, Becky, as well. But Joey, when did you when did Paul Reubens and Pee-wee happen for you?
I saw Big Adventure for the first time in November, right? Like it's been that, it was
like of
that
this
recent.
past year.
Yeah, like
Okay.
almost like less than a year ago. I feel like growing up, he just wasn't on my radar. I don't think I had any friends who like knew him, loved him, whatever. But then I keep in all these different social circles, like in college, like who I met you through, and then also like my current like sort of main group of friends are all like 3, 5, 7, 8, like whatever, like a handful of years older than me, and like it's just enough of an age gap where like he was like the guy to so many of these people. And I feel like, I don't know if it was just the specific people I was friends with or just my age in general, but he just wasn't around. And I wish that, because I mean, even, watching Pee-wee's Big Adventure for the first time at like 34 years old last year, like I was just like, this is amazing. But it's not like he has a lifetime of goodwill where I can see him in this and just like be overtaken by glee. Like what I see here is first just like, oh, they're making him look ugly and gross, and that's the joke. And like, it just like, that doesn't work. You know what I mean? But it's not, if I had grown up with Pee-wee, I would have been like, this is the funniest thing in the movie. But instead of just like, they're relying on that. Okay.
So you never watched Pee-wee's Playhouse? Have you ever seen, have you ever seen Pee-wee's Playhouse?
I saw the last year after I just watched Big Adventure. I watched with a couple of friends Pee-wee's, like the Christmas special, which I think is basically like kind of an episode of that. And so I don't think I've ever seen the show. I saw like that version of it, but I don't think I've ever seen the show. Like I know about like you said the magic word, or you said the secret word, or whatever. Like I know that. I'm getting all the language wrong because I don't actually know it, but like I know about it, but I don't think I've ever actually seen it.
Interesting. Becky, what about you?
So I actually am old enough that Pee-wee's Playhouse was like still a very big deal.
Hell yeah.
But it's one of those weird things that I still have no idea why I wasn't allowed to watch it for some reason, but I still would watch, like I would sneakily watch some of it. Like it was on like right after Garfield and Friends.
Yes.
Saturday mornings.
You got it. Yep.
And so I would always get to see like a little bit of it. And like you said, there was always at least one kid who could do the impression. And I don't know if you, at school dances, they would play Tequila and you do the dance.
Oh, of course.
So yeah, he was like a very big part of the culture. And actually, I feel like when I was a kid, the most I knew about Pee Wee Herman, I learned from In Flight of the Navigator, where the ship does an impression of Pee Wee Herman.
Oh my God. Wow, that's a deep cut. Yeah, I love it. Yes. Holy. Yeah, that's funny because like even though as someone who wasn't allowed to watch it, it just seeps so far into the pop culture zeitgeist that like, and like it is fucking like I can kind of understand why, even if they weren't, evangelical, like why your parents wouldn't, like, I don't know what it is about people. Like there's something wrong with it. You know what I mean? Like there's something, and that's like what's so like subversive
like
about
David
Paul
Lynch
Reubens.
for kids.
But it's like, it's so pure and it's so like fun and just frantic and energetic. But there's just something off about the whole Pee-wee thing and about Pee-wee's, and like you will never be able to like find something that is specifically offensive about Pee-wee's Playhouse. But like, yeah,
it's just unsettling, right? Like it's weird.
It's so weird.
It's uncanny.
That's a good word for it. Yeah, it is uncanny, and just like the talking furniture and like how. Like, so yeah, a lot of the sort of like set design stuff was almost like a horror nightmare. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's not cute.
Had like when I was a kid, and I don't know if Pee-wee's Playhouse like influences, but I had a nightmare about talking furniture when I had a fever.
I'm pretty sure it did.
Nightmare. It's nightmare fuel. Talking furniture is not cool.
No. Yeah. But I still love it. But when Paul Reubens died, I was telling my daughter about him, and we found some Pee-wee's Playhouses on YouTube. And she was like a little bit like she's 9, so she's a combination of like, well, this is kind of great, but also like, what the hell is this? Like, why? And I think that the moment of like, oh, this kind of explains why you're so weird, Dad, or like, this is what my parents watch for children's television. But like, Yeah, it was definitely a sort of like you had to be there sort of thing, but she also thought it was cool. So, yeah, I don't know. Again, it's not something that I would go to like a 10-year-old and be like, you know what, you got to watch all of Pee-wee's Playhouse. But like 40-year-olds, they'd be like, you know what, we got to watch all of Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Well, I think going back to what we were saying about like movies like this, comedies that are either timely or timeless, I think that somehow Pee-wee is both. Like it could only be made when it was made, but it also kind of exists at all times, and like that's weird.
Yeah, and if you like want to appreciate something that's insanely creative and like fantastic, right? Like you like, but like adults should be watching Pee-wee's Playhouse now, like not children anymore, because it's not for modern children, and like it just wouldn't work, I don't think, for modern children. But
I mean, I hope this isn't too off topic, but I'm just curious. As a father, I'm sure you see the shows your kids are watching, and I know when we were kids, there was just a lot of stuff that was surreal. Like there's Pee-wee's Playhouse, and if you watch Old Sesame Street, that we had growing up in the 80s and 90s, it's so trippy.
Yeah,
and I'm like, do they have that anymore in kids' television?
I mean, not. Like my kids basically just watch Bluey at this point, like because it's amazing,
which is a win.
Bluey is a good show.
It's a fantastic show, but it is unique. Like it is uniquely what it is, right? Like it is not the kind of show that would have been made 30 years ago, like at all, right? It is incredibly moving and like real and raw and pure, and like it's its own thing in the kind of the same way that Pee-wee's Playhouse is. Like it plays to like it plays to now. It plays to sort of the culture now. And that played to the culture in the mid 80s, right? Like you know, the most surreal thing my kids do is watch like other kids playing Roblox. You know, like that to me is like, what the fuck are you like, how is this interesting to you? Or just like, you know, reels of like dog videos, like that is, to me, I can't get my head around like how that's possibly interesting.
Because you're old.
Yeah, no, I definitely am. Plus Pee-wee's Playhouse had Phil Hartman and Lawrence Fishburne, so like, you know.
Yeah, Cowboy Curtis.
Hell yeah. 1999 staple, Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah.
Who was in some movie. What was the movie he was in, Joey? Okay.
Bringing Out the Dead?
That's it. Bringing Out the Dead. No. I'll think of it eventually. My favorite Sphinx quotes. So one of my favorite scenes comes from the Sphinx doing his Yoda stuff. But you must be like the wolf pack, not the six pack. My very favorite is you must lash out with every limb like the octopus who plays the drums. The one that's sort of like the way that Wes Studi delivers it, like you get the joke, but when he says when you can balance a tack hammer on your head, you will head off your foes with a balanced attack.
That's my favorite one. That was the one I was going to bring up. It's just, and why are there watermelon on my feet?
But the best is when he goes to Roy, he goes, you must learn to master your rage. And then Roy's like, or your rage will become your master? That's what you're going to say, isn't it? And he goes, not necessarily.
My mom quoted that one all the time.
That and I don't need a compass to show me which way the wind shines are like two of my absolute favorite lines in comedies ever, and none of them make sense to anybody who hasn't seen the movie. So I love Wes Studi. He's also great. Like everybody's fucking great. Everybody's great in this movie. I love them all. Anyways,
I will say that there's not like other than the Dane Cook of it, where
all right, Dane Cook.
I just don't. I mean, he's not bad because he's not over. Like, he's used the right amount. Like,
yes,
there's not a bad performance. Like, I don't think that there's
9 seconds is the right amount of Dane Cook.
Yeah,
yeah.
But again, that's the kind of thing where just like I can't point to it.
So everyone wins.
I can't point to a thing where I'm just like that doesn't work. It's just like it just doesn't come together. Which is like I wish it'd be like I think Ben Stiller sucks in this movie. Like that's why I don't like it. Like that's not true. Like that's it's not like I think everybody is very committed to the specific brand of weirdness they are bringing to the screen.
So let me just ask you a last question, right, to both of you. We talked about like the editing. We talked about how this could be better, et cetera, et cetera. But like, is this basically Like, is this like a missed opportunity of a movie, or is it
in what way?
Like, is there this movie, but like when we talked about Wild Wild West, and we talked about all the ways that movie could easily have been great, right? Like all the different choices they could have made and should have made, and like are baffling. Is there something, and I can't really point to it either, and we sort of talked about this, so maybe we already kind of have talked about it, but just like, is there a version of this movie that you can sort of envision where it is kind of timeless and does kind of all work?
I don't know if they could do it in 1999, but I think this kind of movie could send up superhero movies in a way that I would really enjoy. But I don't think there was enough to sort of reference at that time to make it work.
So like do you think a remake would be?
No, I don't think it would work today. I don't think today is the right time either. I don't know. Like, I feel like the mid 2000s, like when Scary Movie was lampooning Scream and stuff like that, like this might have done better, but it also could have been way, way worse. I don't know.
Yeah. Becky, what do you think?
I don't think so, because I think a lot of its failures are what I find interesting about it. Like, not everything works, but it's just so wacky and so of its time that I think it's sort of perfect for what it is if you accept it on its own terms. And I honestly wouldn't want a better version like that was totally different. Like, I want this weird little 90s time capsule that it is.
Yeah, once Tom Waits shows up, I'm just like, you know what?
Yeah.
The 90s call. They want their 90s back.
Did you know Tom Waits does that weird thing with his hands in the movie because he wrote all of his lines on his hands, and so he's actually just looking at his lines?
Oh my God, I didn't know that. That's amazing. That's so amazing.
And like, if you want one fact to be like, here's what kind of movie this is, I think that is maybe the one that you tell people. You're like, well, Tom Waits plays a mad scientist, and he keeps looking at his hands because that's where his lines are written down. Do you like that, or do you not? Because that will determine whether or not you're going to enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I lead in with like, if you're okay with a guy whose whole joke is that he farts,
yes,
this could be a movie for you.
But like in deadly ways that actually is weirdly effective at fighting bad guys. One of the most effective members of the team is the Spleen and Invisible Boy that one time. When it turns out he actually, and like, that's a great gag, I have to say, but he actually can turn invisible.
But
it's like
it is,
really
but
fun.
It annoys me. It annoys me that he does. Like, I wish that he didn't,
because it makes the joke funnier that he actually can do the thing that is the joke.
Yeah, because it's like we're all thinking that like, oh, okay, sure, and we think that's where it's going.
When you turn invisible, you can just like feel it. All right. That's that. Okay, we are going to, I think we already basically know one of the answers you're going to say. Maybe not. Maybe it's going to be a giant curveball, but we will find out, and we're going to move to our final question. So Joey, take it away.
Becky, what is your favorite film of 1999?
As I mentioned before, that would be Fight Club.
And what is your favorite film of all time?
The Shining.
Ooh, quick apt draw with that one too.
Yeah, I have like a top 3 that like sort of never changes.
What are the top 3?
The Shining, Mulholland Drive, and Zodiac.
Where among David Lynch's films does The Straight Story rank for you?
Oh God, it's so good. So it's not my favorite. Like, I tend to like his surreal stuff the best, but I do really like The Straight Story.
I also, on that sort of note, John, I can't believe we went the entire episode without mentioning even once The Elephant Man, where we're like, where can they go next if they like this movie? Like The Elephant Man.
I was
very straightforward.
Saying it out loud to the podcast, because I feel like you should go like Straight Story, Elephant Man, then Blue Velvet. Then if you're okay with Blue Velvet, you can move on to the non-linear stuff. Which I would go Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway, and if you really like him, then you can do Inland Empire.
I've never seen Inland Empire.
If you have to be a really big Lynch fan to like it.
And we talked about where I fit.
Yeah, I would not suggest you watch Inland Empire, John.
Okay. Although weirdly, I might be like, this is the best David Lynch movie ever.
It's like the Lynchiest Lynch movie.
I think Becky and Julia should do a David Lynch podcast.
I would love that.
You guys should hook up and do a David Lynch and David Cronenberg podcast.
I love the David
and Fincher.
Yeah, and Fincher. All three Davids. Yeah, she lists
my crazy Davids. I love them. They're like three.
My crazy guys. Davids. There you go. So, like, what is it about? What is it about The Shining that makes it your favorite movie, and you don't have to think about even for a second about whether or not it's your favorite movie?
There's this sense of dread that's so palpable and so effective.
Mm-hmm.
I think more effective than any other horror movie I've seen, and I think I related to it on some level. Because, like, my family's, like, a little dysfunctional. And when we would go on vacation, there would be this thing. Like, I was, like, the good kid, and I was just trying to stay quiet. But my dad and my brother were always going at it. And it's, like, there was stuff that I could, it's, like, if things, went a little crazier. Like, if we were in an evil hotel and my dad got possessed by, like, an evil Delbert Grady type.
Yep.
Yep. But also just honestly, just the sense of movement and the cinematography. I mean, like, I'm a huge Stanley Kubrick fan.
Yeah.
But I also really like how cynical it is about the American family. And I think there's a million different theories people have on The Shining, but I think that's a big part of the commentary of the film.
Yeah, and like whether or not The Shining is like a horror movie is always an interesting thing to me. Because I know it is, but it also, like, it's a similar kind of just pervasive dread that is in Eyes Wide Shut, right? Where it's like you're never quite sure, because, like, it's not like gruesome, right? And there aren't like a ton of like jump scares.
It gets under your skin, and I think that's why
it's under your skin. Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Popular, and people come up with these wild theories. I don't know if you guys have seen Room 237.
Yeah,
but it is very entertaining.
No, it's awesome. Yeah,
I'm
it's super
obsessed with the moon landing guy.
Yeah.
But actually, it does tie into David Lynch, though, because I don't know if you know this, but Kubrick was a huge fan of Eraserhead. And when he was making The Shining, he was like, this is the vibe I want. And he had everybody watch Eraserhead.
I had no idea.
And I remember the first time I watched The Shining, before I even knew that scene where Jack looks down at the maze.
Yeah.
And he sees, like, them in, like, a little tiny version of it. I was like, this is so David Lynch. And then I found out that that's a little bit by design.
That's really interesting. I had absolutely no idea that was the case. I kind of think of, like, Kubrick as being, like, uninfluenceable. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, why would he take ideas from other, like, did he watch these other people's movies? That seems weird to me.
Well, that's why it's so interesting, because I think people have this idea of Kubrick as just like this god, but he was a huge movie fan.
And I kind of know that, like, intellectually.
And, like, Spielberg was one of his best buddies, and he loved movies.
Yeah.
And I know, like, two of his favorites were Eraserhead and American Werewolf in London, which are, like, also two of my favorite movies.
It does feel like, in the music sense of it, where it's like, to find your next favorite band, find your favorite band's favorite band. It's like, well, who's your favorite filmmaker's favorite filmmaker? And it's like, oh, it's Kubrick. Well, it's like, well, that's where the line ends, right? Like, that's the end of the lineage. Like, he didn't admire it. It's just like, he just did the thing. It's like, no, but yeah, it is weird. I agree with that. Just like, no, he just himself.
Like, I know Spielberg watches a ton of movies, but I can't imagine him doing it. You know what I mean? Like,
I think Spielberg also fakes it, because I heard stories about, like, how he hadn't seen, like, certain, like, he didn't even know, like, what the Triangle of Sadness was, like, a movie, and it was, like, nominated for Best Picture. Like, it's just like, I don't know. There's things, but yes, I know what you're saying.
Yeah. But no, that's fascinating. I'm glad we were able to somehow get David Lynch, actually many times into this episode, because we have him a little bit. The intro as well. So, yeah, David Lynch is always in our hearts. He'll be in our heart like Tarzan, just going all 99 everywhere now.
Was that 99?
Yeah, we already did that one. Yeah.
God.
Yeah. A lot of movies came out this year. That's why we're doing a podcast about it. Becky, where, if people want to learn more about you, where should they go?
So I don't have a website right now. That's in progress. So I would tell people to follow me on Twitter. It's at BeckyJane02.
And await your website.
Yes.
No,
I really should have my shit more together than I do. But like, it's whatever. I have ADHD. This is a work in progress.
I hear you. That's fine. Thank you so much for joining us. And Joey, before we go...
I have a roundabout way of getting to the next one.
Let's do it. Yeah.
This movie's name is referenced in a... This is such a dumb clue, and these are supposed to be like quick and breezy, but this is... I was thinking all day of like, what? How do... Okay, so here's what
we didn't have one last episode, so we got to make up for... Yeah.
I'm taking up the air of at least 2 episodes worth.
Got it.
This movie's title was referenced in a movie that I love in conjunction with Captain Nemo by an actor that you, John, mentioned on our last episode about a different version of a previous movie we had covered.
What?
Listeners, if any of you got that,
I'll explain to you when we're done recording.
Please write in what the hell Joey's talking about.
Like, you need like a map with like yarn.
Yeah, it's like watching that second Pirates of the Caribbean movie. I'm like, what's happening? Who's that? Well, okay. Anyways,
it makes total sense.
It makes total sense.
I was like literally trying to take notes. Like,
yeah.
I will say it one more time in case I said it wrong.
No, it's okay.
It is referenced in a movie alongside Captain Nemo by an actor John mentioned on the last episode. That actor is also in another version of a movie we covered this season.
Okay. Well, I didn't talk about Guy Pearce last episode, so that's not it. Okay. If you figure it
so
out,
simple.
it's like the
so
Sunday
easy.
Puzzler.
It's just screaming. It's just shouting.
Joey is Will Shorts. And if you figure it out, write in and let us know what the hell Joey's talking about.
We have to do it before the next 2 weeks because
in the next week after you hear this or so. And we will reveal all. In the meantime, thank you, Becky.
Thank you.
Look out for frogs.
They don't stop coming. Fed to the rules and they hit the ground running. Didn't make sense not to live for fun. Your brain gets smart, but your head gets dumb.
So much to do, so much to see. So what's wrong with taking the back streets? You'll never know if you don't go.
You'll never shine if you don't glow.
Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play.
Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on, get paid.
And all that glitters is gold. Only shooting stars break the mold.
It's a cool place, and they say it gets colder. You're bundled up now, wait till you get older. But the medium and big to differ, judging by the hole in the satellite picture.
The ice we skate is getting pretty thin. Water's getting